Amy, let me tell you about a magical place that is so exactly designed to be enclosed space, year-round fun for the whole family that I bet you already know what I'm going to say before I even say the name. Let's say it together on 3. 1, 2, 3. Great Wolf Lodge. You got it, Amy.
My kids loved Great Wolf Lodge when we went. You probably already know that it has a huge indoor water park with a wave pool, lazy river, a bunch of massive water slides. But then your pack can hit the other attractions because, wait, there's more.
Great Wolf Lodge has adventure-packed attractions like Magi Quest, a live-action game kids can play throughout the lodge, plus the Northern Lights Arcade. Spent some quality time there, so your kid who loves the lazy river and your kid who loves fantasy games will both have a great time.
Great Wolf Lodge also offers great dining options and complimentary daily events like nightly dance parties, all under one roof. Unpack the car once and you're settled in to have fun. And with 22 lodges across the country, you're always a short drive away from adventure.
We've both had such great times at Great Wolf Lodge, so bring your pack together at a lodge near you. Learn more at greatwolf.com and strengthen the pack. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Fresh Take from What Fresh Hell, laughing in the face of motherhood. This is Margaret.
And this is Amy, and today we are talking to Lucas Mann. Lucas teaches creative writing at the University of Massachusetts, Dartmouth. He is the author of the book we're going to talk about today, which is called Attachments, Essays on Fatherhood and Other Performances, as well as 3 other books. Lucas lives in Providence, Rhode Island, with his family, where they own Riff Raff Bookstore and Bar. Welcome, Lucas.
Thank you so much. It's lovely to be here.
So your other books, they really cover a variety of topics. They're essays on topics like reality TV and a long-term romantic relationship and how they intertwine, addiction and loss and how they intertwine, and minor league baseball. And so out of all the things, your wide variety of interests, what gave you the inspiration to write a book about parenthood?
Well, I mean, I guess the short answer would be that I guess when you hear them all like that, it sounds like they have nothing to do with each other. And they don't kind of. I guess I've always been the sort of writer that kind of keys in on what's in front of me and sort of the complexities of the relationships that are most important in our lives, or sort of the thing that we are thinking about or obsessed with at a given moment in time. And I like kind of drilling down on what is fascinating me. And I am a parent. When I was writing this book, I was a fairly new parent, and that experience was sort of all-consuming and life-altering in ways that I think it is for everybody. And I don't think I wanted to necessarily write about it. But if I sat down to write, and if I sat down to think about what I might be curious about in the world, lo and behold, that was it.
Top of mind, as we say.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. We had a similar experience starting a podcast. We're like, what's the one thing we talk about the most right now? It's parenting. And talk about the title Attachments, where that word comes from and what meaning it has to you and throughout the book.
Oh, that's a good question. I really hate titles and have a really hard time titling things.
Having just gone through a titling episode with my partner, Amy, I can say she feels the same.
Yeah.
Impossible, right? Like, How can you sum it all up? But part of the book, a lot of the book is about obviously sort of the attachments in these familial relationships, right? The way that I am sort of literally emotionally attached to my kid. But then also a lot of the book is chronicling like early parenthood when I was sort of around as the, I guess, quasi-primary caregiver for most of the first 2.5 years of her life, and that intersected with COVID. And so there was just like a literal, we are attached to each other. Like, she is my little attachment. And then also, the book, I think, is also kind of does some cultural studies stuff as well. And in talking about my own experiences in parenthood, and my kid also sort of talks about these different cultural figures that I get attached to, or these sort of representations of fatherhood and these sort of famous figures that, in some ways I feel like almost imprint onto my life as I live it. And so that felt like a different definition of attachment almost.
You told a story in the book about a pediatrician's office where I think it was a female pediatrician sort of offhandedly made a remark to you, and it's the things that we attach to the things that we see, the meaning that she sort of attaches to seeing you with your daughter. Can you tell that story?
Yeah, these sort of casual, entirely well-meaning throwaway lines. And I should say I really love our pediatrician.
We love pediatricians here.
Just this, my daughter was really little, and I was in there with her alone. She was either getting shots or it was a checkup for something early on. And she was, having a hard time. And the doctor came in and I'm sure I looked all frazzled. And she said something to the effect of like, you have like this perfect helpless dad look about you, which in some ways was like said in a really gentle way, but it was sort of the soft bigotry of low expectations or whatever that expression is, right? That sense of like, oh, look at you trying. And I think something that comes up a lot in the book and was encapsulated in that scene was this simultaneous, like absolutely wanting to take advantage of the sort of generosity and pity that you can be looked at as a dad that is not afforded to moms often, but at the same time, this sense of like, but like, wait a second, like I'm real and this parental relationship is real. So you feel both sort of over acknowledged and over sympathized with and also erased at the same time in a strange way.
Yeah, and it's super interesting because we obviously have this conversation quite often from the other side of doing, 12 hours of hard labor and then sitting at the diner at night and dad adjusts the kid's bow and like 12 diners rush over to be like, look at dad, he's just the most amazing saint adjusting the bow. But I think it's interesting to consider it from the point of view of like, it has negatives too. I mean, we also are seen as like the competent superhero where the dad is then sometimes seen as the helpless goofball.
And I think that a lot of sort of what ends up coming up in the book is this sense of how, maybe that's not enough, right? Or how it's very easy and pleasurable, I think, to be the sort of good, well-meaning, evolved, contemporary millennial dad. And a lot of that, I think, has to do with sort of self-deprecation and deflection and saying, there's my wife, the absolute superhero who does everything incredible. And here I am, at best, a useless ally, but I'm going to be a vocal ally. And that's not to say that allyship isn't incredibly important, but it's also really strange and fraught when you theoretically are both doing the same job and working in the same family unit and responsible to one another. The idea that one role could be seen as so automatically primary and then the other role can sort of get credit for simply being like, I acknowledge how hard this is for you. And then suddenly we're not talking about how hard it either is or should be for fathers. And maybe that should be the goal.
The subtitle of the book is Fatherhood and Other Performances. So like, hey, everyone, if you think titles are hard, subtitles are really hard.
They really are, yes.
But I get this. This is occurring to me as you're saying this, that is fatherhood as a performance. You're almost obliged to perform this like, yep, I don't even know which way the diaper goes. Even though you were the primary caregiver, it's what's being asked of you. And you're like, yep, that's me, dumb dad with the diaper bag. And you can feel good about it or bad about it, but it's what's expected.
Yeah. And also just that sort of, that kind of visibility, right? And I think it's very interesting. There's so much incredible motherhood literature that explicitly talks about sort of fighting against this invisibility, right? Of this sense of being out at the playground with your kid. And it's like all of a sudden society's conditioned to see you as not existing and the kid existing. And I have found, and I know a lot of other people have this weird flip where I think you feel incredibly visible out in the world with your kid in ways that can be incredibly ego inflating and not deserved, as we sort of alluded to before. But this sense that you are sort of both in the moment, maybe more than I ever have been in my life, right? The sense of watching your kid and being with your kid and being so focused on somebody, but then also being hyper aware of yourself and your big body and this little kid climbing on you and the ways that can be really beautiful. And then also the ways in which that can veer into something awful very quickly, and sort of the sense that it can be both real and performed at the same time is something that was really interesting to me.
There's so much good writing on this topic on the book. And Amy pulled out this quote that I love from page 48, and we'd love you to read it for us.
I'll set it up a little bit while you find it, Lucas. This is a part of the book where your daughter gets to choose a doll. And you're white, your daughter's white, and she chooses a baby doll that's a black baby doll. And how you react to that as a parent, I could deeply identify with this part of the book. The part that starts with, it's that weird gray area.
For a while, I couldn't stop posting photos of her holding her black baby doll. It's that weird gray area where an aspect of your child is not staged, but highlighted. She loved this doll and carried the doll everywhere. And I'm not sure if proud is the right word, but sort of proud of the implication that I encouraged this, which really just means that I wasn't such an absolute bleep that I demanded she get a white doll because she's a white kid. To mention it outright is gross enough to ruin any good implication, so it was left for me to perform without comment, hoping that someone else might. it's that feeling, all too specific, all too recognizable.
We all identify with that. We've all done the like, here's my kid doing something really selfless and wonderful and please like.
Not my 8-year-old watching Selma on a Tuesday night. Who knew?
Right. Please
Yeah,
clap.
exactly.
Right. It's a performance that your kid's involved with, but because it reflects back on your parenting. Anyway, I really could identify with that. Like, it would be too gross for you to say, look what a wonderful parent I am, but you're hoping somebody else will point it out.
Right. Like, it wants to feel effortless. It wants to feel like it's just woven into the way that your child is and therefore the way that you are. But clearly it feels effortful enough, or it feels noticeable enough that you're looking around being like, hey, isn't this noticeable? But even just considering the fact that that's true makes the whole thing seem way less beautiful and a lot more gross.
You click on another aspect of this that we're going to take a break, and you and I share a very strong pet peeve here. We're talking to Lucas Mann, the author of Attachments, Essays on Fatherhood and Other Performances, and we'll be right back.
Hellions, it's time for some spring cleaning, and I don't just mean the coat closets. Doing your financial spring cleaning can actually be super easy when you let Monarch do your financial spring cleaning for you. One dashboard that gets your entire financial life organized. No more clutter, no more mess, no more logins scattered everywhere, just accounts, investments, property, and more, all in one place. Get your first year of Monarch for half off, just $50 with promo code FRESH. Monarch allows you to look not only at what you've already spent, but also to plan for the future. With Monarch, you can set savings goals, plan for big purchases, and notice spending trends before they become a problem. I can generate cash flow reports that show me what we spent this quarter, this month, what we're probably going to spend next month, and feel prepared, organized, and knowing how to plan for the future. No more surprises and a lot more clarity. Try Monarch. Use code FRESH at monarch.com to get your first year half off at just $50. That's 50% off your first year at monarch.com with code FRESH. My favorite skincare products actually feel more like self-care, like they're so nice to put on and they smell so good that I'm actually happy when I get to that part of my day. And I swear that is how I feel about Osea's anti-aging body balm.
Amy, you are usually the lotions and potions queen on this podcast, but I have to say, hard agree.
Osea's anti-aging body balm is a liquid silk body balm that combines the lasting hydration of a lotion with the firming power of a serum, leaving skin smoother and firmer.
This body balm is clinically tested and designed to deliver visible results you can see and feel.
So we've gotten to use this product for a couple of months now, and I swear I have really noticed firmer and smoother skin, like on the back of my hands. It's like getting a mini spa treatment from head to toe.
Get a spring-worthy glow with clean, clinically tested skincare from Osea. And right now, we have a special discount just for our listeners.
Get 10% off your first order site-wide with code FRESH at OseaMalibu.com.
That's 10% off your first order with code FRESH at OSEAMalibu.com. Amy, when I'm having a good hair day, it usually makes my whole day better. And that's why on every day, I'm taking Nutrafol.
Nutrafol is the #1 dermatologist-recommended hair growth supplement brand. And it's the #1 hair growth supplement brand personally used by dermatologists. Nutrafol's hair growth supplements are peer-reviewed, NSF certified for sport, and clinically tested.
Nutrafol offers multiple formulas for men and women tailored to different life stages and lifestyle factors, so you get support that's actually right for you. Adding Nutrafol to your daily routine is easy. Order online, no prescription needed, with automated deliveries and free shipping to keep you on track.
Let your hair be one less thing to worry about. See visibly thicker, stronger, faster-growing hair in 3 to 6 months with Nutrafol.
For a limited time, Nutrafol is offering our listeners $10 off your first month subscription and free shipping when you visit Nutrafol.com and enter promo code LAUGHING.
That's Nutrafol.com, spelled Nutrafol.com, promo code LAUGHING.
So another thing that you capture in such a funny way in the book is parents who claim their babies love Kendrick, like the kind of the exporting of coolness that we never possessed onto our kids. And we talk often about having kids who don't fit the mold in different ways. And I think that as a parent of kids who don't fit the mold in certain ways that have been kind of difficult and painful for them, the kind of like, my kid is so weird that they love 90s hip hop. I'm like, no, your baby does not love 90s hip hop. I'm sorry. I have to stop you there.
You're right. If anything, your baby loves the expression on your face when you love 90s hip hop, and maybe not even that.
And that might be worth celebrating, but I got to call you a little bit on this.
Right. Exactly.
And what is that about? I mean, you kind of talk in the book about how it is your own coolness, and you're hoping if you project that onto the blank canvas of your 20-pound baby, that somehow you're going to get to have something you didn't have because your kid has it because they like Kendrick?
Oh, that's a really interesting way of putting it. You know, in some ways, this is so common that it's kind of a cliche, but that sense of all of the ways in which we felt insecure or sad or unheard or parented in ways that we didn't like or whatever as kids, it's like, oh, obviously, I'm just going to do the opposite of that. And again, it's that weird kind of like something that can feel incredibly selfless. And in some ways, you are really thinking hard about how you want another person to feel in the world or be in the world. But also, it is incredibly selfish and incredibly wrapped up in your own sense of self at the same time. And so, yeah, like, you know, I think a lot of what we're talking about is you can say it's hypocrisy, and in some ways maybe it is, but it's also, to me, what's really interesting is like this simultaneity, right? That you can feel both entirely thinking about this other person who you want to have this coolness or this happiness or this love or whatever. But that can be true while you are also thinking incredibly intensely about yourself and the things that you wish were different or the things that you would like to relive, you know?
Absolutely. This is when I started a garage band for my kid when he was 10. And I was like, oh, they're going to go on tour. It's going to be huge. And one of the other dads said to me, yeah, like every great band started by the guy's mom. Like, okay, you might have me there. This might not be how it works.
That's actually a good point.
There's another sort of part of fatherhood that you sort of unpack in the book, which is that the fathers in children's books, in stories, in our cultural narrative, the father comes into focus only when the mother is gone. And it starts at King Lear and it ends at Roald Dahl. So tell us about what you think that's about and how that affected you as a father.
In some ways it feels literally like the main character needs to be cleared away for a side character to become a main character in the way that, and there's something, you know, it comes up in different ways in later essays in the book as well, but this sense that like fatherhood being expressed most when everything else has broken down. So it's like, it's not like, oh, this is part of a system or this is part of an expectation or this is sort of the boredom and monotony of daily life. But it's actually like the safety rails are off, either like the mother is gone, or in some cases, you know, later in the book, I talk about, Cormac McCarthy's famous novel, The Road, right? And that's literally like, not only is the mother gone, like society is
everyone's gone. It's truly fatherhood as last resort, just the end of the road.
Not just like last resort, but also like it gets to feel extra beautiful because it's like, it's literally life or death. It's literally like, there is nothing now but me and this kid and this, you know, my charge, my duty. And so it takes, I think, what should be, or what could be just sort of a domestic story that should be beautiful in its sort of everydayness and its commonness. And like, it's very hard to find or read fatherhood narratives that seem to know what to do with commonness. It's like, it's almost as though the story only starts when it's taken out of the realm of sort of like what you would consider to be like domestic literature or domestic art. And then it becomes a hero's journey or a survival tale or it's taken to this, like, to this extreme that is incredibly appealing and compelling, but also skips reality over and over and over again.
And I think I can be very cynical about the ability for roles to change. We talk so much about like breaking out of stereotypes and I get sometimes like, oh, do we have to have community organization around blah, blah, blah. It seems very tiring to me on top of all the other things I have to do. But I do think fatherhood has changed a tremendous amount. Like I remember my father often says, born in the 30s, that he never spoke to his grandfather. He always marvels that like my kids come up, oh, what are you doing? And they talk to him. He's like, I don't think I ever said 5 words to my grandfather. And I think the idea that what a lot of those books are capturing is that the mother is accessible and the father is not. So you need to be in these very extraordinary circumstances in order to have access to a father's emotional life or emotional connection. And that without that, the default is that dads don't connect and moms do.
And I think similarly, the other side of that is that the implication is that fathers don't have any access to their own emotional life unless it's framed in these terms, right? It's less everybody else's problem and it's more like,
unless there's an apocalypse, they don't know how to talk.
I don't know. And I mean, this is sort of a gender conversation outside of parenthood, but I think it's reflected in these narratives, right? Like the sense of, I don't really know how to express my love unless it's like that person is drowning and I shall save them from drowning. And there's a lot of love in that gesture, but it is a very different gesture than every morning making somebody breakfast and telling them casually that you love them, right? Or right, like these are just different expressions of an emotion.
Yeah, and I think having the father's voice as a writer and being able to express that, I do think this conversation is actually changing. I think that,
I agree.
You know, I see the generation before still as like the dad runs out and changes your oil before the road trip. And you know that means he loves you. And
he was like up all night thinking about it. He wants your car not to...
He stood in the back at the concert, right?
Yeah.
It does matter. Yeah. And that he's not going to let you go with those tires not inflated correctly. And that is love in its generation. But I like to see, because I think it's good for everybody's emotional health, fathers being able to access more of this feeling of like, oh, I do actually have this huge love for this kid that's not just like I'm bumbling in the background. I can kind of take a step towards the center of this.
Yeah, I agree that it feels like something that's actually changing. And I mean, a lot of what we're talking about, right, is presence, is sort of just the commonness of an experience of day-to-day service for the people around you and the people that you care about most and connection to those people. In that sense, right, that like when dad's around, it's not an occasion. Right. That like, whoa, hey, we're all like, what mysteries must he have to impart? Now he's here, you know.
He's come in from mowing the lawn. Does he have anything to say?
Right. Yeah. Right. I don't think there's anything mysterious about me to my kid. Right. Like I'm the most regular and boring and embarrassing person on earth. I'm just like there, you know?
I have a question about writing. This is such a good book and it's so beautifully written. And I have a writing question I want to nerd out on. So we're talking to Lucas Mann. He's the author of Attachments. We'll be right back. All my kids learned to swim when they were little. It was super important to me that they be confident and safe in the water. There was only one problem with that. Taking them to swim lessons. I mean, the pools were freezing. There were always cranky adults doing laps right there. And it was definitely not, for any of us, what you would call fun.
Amy, heard. But now there's Goldfish Swim School. Goldfish takes a really thoughtful approach to swim lessons, combining research-based teaching with a warm, kid-friendly environment that actually helps kids thrive in the water.
Every detail at Goldfish is thoughtfully designed to create a golden experience, from shiver-free, warm indoor pools to comfy waiting areas for parents to professionally trained lifeguards on deck.
Goldfish uses an approach called the science of swim play, which combines guided play with proven teaching techniques to help kids learn to swim, build water safety skills, and gain confidence, all at their own pace. Lessons are designed to meet kids exactly where they're at.
If you've been thinking about swim lessons or just wondering where to start, this is a great opportunity. Right now, Goldfish Swim School is offering a waived membership plus your child's first lesson free at participating locations.
Just visit goldfishswimschool.com/free to find a location near you and enroll using promo code FREE.
That's goldfishswimschool.com/free, promo code FREE.
You know that thing where you get an amazing pair of shoes at a really great price and want to tell everyone about it? Yeah, so do we. Here at Designer Shoe Warehouse, we'll give you something to brag about, like the latest styles from brands you love, or the trends everyone's obsessing over, or shoes that make you feel like, well, you. So go ahead, show off a little. Find shoes that get you at prices that get your budget. Head to your DSW store or DSW.com today. DSW, let us surprise you.
So you say in this book, the book sort of moves all over the place stylistically. The essays, I want to have you read a little bit more because your writing is so conversational, so full of things you want to unpack and hear more about. But you don't tie your essays up in a bow, which is often the sort of like, here's making meaning, right? If the dad is there, something meaningful is happening. If the dad's not there, it's just a regular day. That your essays are about the very regular, aggressively so. And that you're not trying to zoom out and tie it up and make meaning because you feel like writing that doesn't have this narrative drive to tie everything up sort of hews more closely to real life than essays that do try to make everything have a larger meaning. Am I saying that correctly?
I think that's exactly right. Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
And I agree. Reading this book, you have an essay that starts off being about Brad Pitt. And it ends up being about your toddler and the way she looks at her own body. And then it goes back to Brad Pitt. And then it's also this. And tell us about that essay and the sort of ideas you knit together and how writing that way frees you to not have to nail it down as much.
So that essay, which has a profane title, so I'm not going to say it, is, in some ways, I think sort of structurally kind of maybe a distillation of all the things that I hope this book does, where it's sort of doing this kind of cultural criticism, looking at pop culture and analyzing pop culture thing, but then also hopefully using that as a lens to get at the things that I would maybe find harder to say head on. And so it started with this project of like, hey, I think that Brad Pitt is constantly eating all the time in his movies. I think that is a bit absurd and not good acting. And maybe I have some funny things to say about it. But then it's this way that I'm really interested in the idea that like being a spectator or sort of being removed and almost watching things isn't entirely separate from living, right? And that there are these sort of constant simultaneous things that are happening. And I think especially in parenthood, when you're like, try as you might, looking at something on your phone and engaging with a meme on your phone and then looking up and your kid's on the climbing instruction, looking like we're literally doing both things at the same time. And I like the idea of trying to play with them as like an entry point to one another as opposed to separate things. And so this idea of sort of what does it mean of a life of watching all of these Brad Pitt movies and this sort of idealized body that is so casual in eating, right? That is just like, shoving sandwiches into his mouth at points that don't make any sense narratively in the movie. And then sort of like that seems like a funny observation and sort of it doesn't mean anything. But then also, what does that add up to in a life of me having my own issues around the way that I see my body and the way that I treat my body and the way that I talk about my body? And then that becoming an entry point into a conversation, about how hard that is to really acknowledge or think about even to myself. But then all of a sudden that is a different conversation when there is a toddler running around and you desperately want them to feel anything about their body that is not what you feel about yours, right? And so in some ways, even though they seem opposing to each other, to me, it almost feels like these doors opening into one another, right? If like my kid is asleep and I'm watching Ocean's 11 for the 100th time or Moneyball or whatever, and I am watching this casual eating of Brad Pitt, and then I'm thinking about how I have never eaten casually, right? How it's never been a not fraught experience for me. And then the idea of like, I'm watching my daughter eat all the time and how I want her to feel about food or not feel about food or not think about food. And maybe there's a universe out there in which all of the stuff that is complicated for me isn't for her, and how maybe that's impossible, but it's something to hope for.
I think, Lucas, it's towards the end of the essay that you talk about your daughter and the ways that she looks at herself. I loved this particular passage, and I'm hoping you can read it for us.
Sure. The relationship between a toddler and reflective surfaces is all possibility. She's still surprised, I think, by just how many different objects can become vessels to bring her back to her own image, her own body moving through the world, always moving. Everything blurs, and then suddenly, wonderfully, there she is again, mimicking herself. Sometimes I see her move past a reflective surface and only realize what she sees when it's almost out of view. She's like a cartoon, freezing for a moment before springing back to look.
As a parent, there's something so magical and so frightening about the joy, the like limitless joy. I remember holding my first baby and then thinking about scars, like all the scars I have on my body. And it's like, it felt to some degree, because I had some postpartum anxiety, like scars were like chasing us, like he's going to get so knocked up and beaten up by the world. But the magic of like the toddler and the young person who is just all joy and possibility, and like, how do we keep things at bay from attacking that joy?
Yeah. And also that sense of just like them looking at themselves without any context for what to think other than just being like, oh my God, I have a body and look at it. This is incredible. Like, can you believe this thing that I'm walking around in? Yeah, it's amazing.
And the feeling of how many, middle-aged people look at a mirror with a sense of joy and just like, there's something so magical about that.
Yeah. And it's that sense that you're talking about, that joy of watching it, and then also instant anxiety.
Yes, because you're like, no.
Because you feel like a clock has just started, Yeah.
Exactly.
And that moment, too, you're watching her look at herself, find such joy in herself. You find such joy in her. It makes me think of the first essay in the book is all about different fantasies you have about your child's future that are, crazy and mundane and everything in between. And there's one. And there was one fantasy that you expressed in particular that I thought, oh, yeah, I've had this moment of don't mess this up. Can you share that one with us?
Her various speech impediments never leave in this fantasy. Everything sounds like a W. There's no moment when we read some scolding book or pseudoscience Atlantic article that makes us go, she's too old, or how do we fix this, or why did we let it get this bad? We decide that sounds only have meaning because we say so. Evolution of language. She's literally evolving language in front of us. It's a privilege to watch, whatever. And we mean it.
That's the fantasy part, that we mean it, right? And we don't worry at all.
Right. That's the biggest fantasy. Yeah.
And then let's talk about the end of the book. The end of the book, the last moment, you're at a party. You're dancing. You're having fun. You're very much, in yourself, doing something for yourself, finding joy for yourself. And then you share pictures of your kid on your phone with strangers. And they tell you she's beautiful. And you say, I was right on the edge of being embarrassed, but I felt grateful instead. And what was that moment like for you? And why did you use that to end the book?
Oh, thanks for bringing that up. Yeah, that, of all the things that I'm going to say I find really tricky in writing, I find endings to be really tricky as well. And in particular, because I, like you were alluding to earlier, like I don't want it to feel like this wrapping up of something, right? I think the best endings are things that feel like they're opening towards something else. And so much of the book chronicles basically the first 4 years of her life. And in so many ways, the book is wrapped up in this feeling of or about this the claustrophobia of that moment in your life as a parent with a really young kid. And then if you sort of throw COVID on top for part of it, right? Well, I honestly wrote that essay just because I thought it was a fun essay and had no thought that it might be in the book. I thought it was just like almost a totally different thing. And then the idea of it actually being a place to be like, well, this is what happens when, like in every parent's life, all of that care and all of that intensity of being with this kid when they're really, really little, and now they're a little bit older, and the world feels like it's opening up again, but also they're still there. And there's that sort of beauty of your life feels fuller, but it also feels fuller because they are still so much of a part of it. And so for whatever reason, that weird being pretty heavily inebriated at a party scene felt like a sort of strange and unexpected way to capture what I hope is a sweet and sincere sentiment.
Right, because you're a parent then too, right? Once you become a parent, you're a parent in all parts of your lives, even ones that aren't, holding hands while the balloon drifts into the sunset or whatever.
Yeah, there can be different selves there, and your kid can be this enormous and wonderful presence, even in the moments that are not directed around them, or when they're even not there,
Mm-hmm. We've been talking to Lucas Mann, the author of Attachments, Essays on Fatherhood and Other Performances. It's a beautifully written book. It's like an etude versus sometimes we present very, like what do you call it? A mechanic's manual. This is a beautiful reflection. So much for our audience to get out of this book. Lucas, tell everybody, it's 2024. People understand how to buy books, but tell our audience where they can find the book and where they can find you and your writing.
Sure. You can find the book anywhere, but as a independent bookstore owner with my family, I'm going to come in pretty hard on that. You can find it at your local indie bookseller, I hope, or you can go to bookshop.org and have an account and get from the closest indie to you. And Bookshop supports indie bookstores. So I think that is the best way to get it. And then my writing is on the internet. It's Googleable enough.
It's Googleable. We all know how to use Google, friends, but we will, just to make it easier, we have a bookshop link with all of the books that we've recommended in the podcast. It will be there. We will link directly to it so it's easy to find. And we will link you to some other fun links of Lucas's all over the internet. So you don't even have to use the Google. Lucas, this was a great conversation and we really enjoyed this book. Thanks so much for talking to us.
Thanks, Lucas.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it.